Welcome back to the Titanium Hangar. Happy Friday, everybody. This is Mike. Today I want to talk to you about being a Masterpiece Transformers completionist and how really there are no true Masterpiece Transformer completionist collectors out there. I'm going to tell you why. We have some pockets of completionism going on out there, but there's a lot of problems to overcome if you even think you're a completionist. Now, this came from the comments in a few videos ago, a few weeks ago, about I'm not going to be a Masterpiece completionist. And I got to thinking, how could even one do it? So, well, there are ways to do it. I'll talk about this. I'll talk about more, but at the end, I'm actually going to tell you what I think most people do. Coming up. So starting out, the reason that there really are no true Masterpiece completionists is because there's so many companies fighting for the Masterpiece space. You look at a third party, you look at, of course, Takara, who technically owns the Masterpiece space, and then even Hasbro, who throws their hat in the ring. So with that, getting every figure from every company that was made and targeted at Masterpiece is impossible. Well, probably possible, but it's well beyond the reach or grasp of the average collector. Rather, the people who think they're completionists are completionists looking at one company or one small segment of Masterpiece collecting, such as Takara. Takara, specifically only G1. Those collectors can keep up with Takara G1. And so with that, that is very possible. It's very doable, but there's also issues when it comes to that. When you get to looking at this right here, so this is a screenshot of a checklist that I found of all of this, but you're going to notice that there are multiple different iterations that Takara puts out. They put out recolors, MP12 has a whole slew of recolors and all that stuff down the road, and with that, trying to keep up with all of the different recolors and repaints and all that kind of stuff can be a challenge in tracking them down. And then you get into, are you official or KO? So I think completists want to say they have a complete set of actual original and non-KOs. So there's a lot of stuff to think about. It kind of gets convoluted when you start looking at this, but there's a lot out there and more factors to discuss. So let's just talk about, say you got Soundwave. So that was the MP13, great figure. I've got the KO of it. But when you say that's just one figure, one character, then you have that subsequent repaint. It's just a repainted figure, same thing, just different coloration to it. I had it, I actually never opened it, oddly enough, and I ended up getting a KO of this Rat Bat. Now, that was the only way you could get Rat Bat back in the day, until, of course, someone started making KOs of them, and then you got the KO Rat Bat. So, if you didn't want the Sound Blaster, you still had to buy it to get this, but then completionists really don't care, because they want everything no matter what, and these are like $200 figures. So with that, that's a lot of money adding up really fast and making it really hard to stay on top of a completionist collection. And this was, what, nearly a decade ago? Then add to that, that if you are a completionist of Takara collecting, do you add in the US releases? All those variations and those kinds of things. And then it starts getting a little bit strange right there, right? And plus, each one of those requires a different purchase for those cassettes. If you wanted to get the Takara Japanese versions, and those cassettes are all included in this one. The Toys R Us exclusive, which was an excellent value. I think it was $120 or $130. And then they came out at the right exact time, had a buy one, get one half off sale. So it made them like $90 a set. So that was really awesome. But with all of this, do even the Takara completionists care about these US versions? Well, I kind of think they do. We start getting into another problem, a prime problem. Do you go with the MP10 from the Japanese release, the Convoy there, or do you go with the Toys R Us US one? Now, again, these problems are old problems that we used to have. But if you're right now saying, hey, I'm a Takara completionist, well, you got to track these older pieces down. And guess what? They're not dropping in price because they're not getting made again, so they're not falling in price like they used to. But again, when it comes to MP10, what did they make? 30 recolors, and then they made them some to go with some shoes. So there's quite a bit to say you're a true Takara completist. So the next thing that sort of makes sense, and I think a lot of people would identify with this as being a Fans Toys completist, which, yeah, that must be easier than Takara, right? Fans Toys hasn't been around making figures quite as long as Takara, so yeah, Fans Toys completists all the way. I see a lot of Fans Toys fanboys out there trying to fill in gaps with older figures and going out looking for even the rare, hard to find ones. So let's take a deep dive look at being a Fans Toys completist and see what you got to do. So aside from tracking down the original FTO1 trailer, which was basically the original toy trailer that was made from the G1 toy, upscaled to fit on the MP01 Optimus Prime. That was the first thing they made. They put out. It was kind of a KO kind of thing, but it was kind of cool. But tracking that down is really hard. But then just looking at what happened in 2015, you've got Sever and Tesla 1.0. That's pretty easy to get. Then you keep going down until you see Grenader T with the purple chest. Okay, you got to be a completionist, got to have that purple chest. Going down to Quake Wave. Then you got Quake Wave Clear. You got Quake Wave toy version, darker shade of color. Then you have Scoria X, which is premium paint. You got Scoria D, which is a Diaclone version. You got Scoria G, which is green version. And then all of that with all the dinos, it starts adding up really fast. It starts getting hard, especially since they're probably not ever putting those exclusive ones back out again. They're limited to 1,000 pieces. Well, you got to wait for the KO maybe. Just focus on the Dinobots. So you focus on these dinos, and there's so many variations of dinos. Now, they're all pretty good figures. I'm not going to knock them at all. They're great figures. But tracking down some of them could be quite expensive on the secondary market. And I don't see any plans for them to reissue dinos for the limited run dinos, especially since, yes, there's a market for them, but not as big as the market for the standard dinos, which they still need to get around to reissuing, and they would sell well. But these specialty dinos are very expensive on the secondary market, hard to come by. I passed on all of them because I wasn't really in on their dinos, and I've gone kind of with Gigapower, but we're going to talk more about that down the road. I'm curious how many people actually have all of the different variations of the dinos, and is that multiple displays, or do they display all of the different variations of one character together, or do they display all the teams separately? That'd be interesting to find out. And do they display them in Dino mode or bot mode? Speaking of Dinobots, I think it would be sort of easy to actually look at collecting a completist of Beast Wars. See, the thing about Beast Wars is Takara didn't do too much with them, and there are a few companies out there making stuff here and there. You could actually be a subgroup Beast Wars collector. It's possible to be a completionist right now of what's been put out for Beast Wars. There's Transart, there's a couple of other companies out there that's made Beast Wars stuff. But when you look at it, there's not that much. There really is not that much with Beast Wars. Now, a lot of people would say, well, no, you got to lump that in with Takara and say, nope, you're going for the Takara original run because they're numbered with Takara. So that gets convoluted too. That's starting to be a problem and an issue anyway. But I don't think that all G1 collectors are Beast Wars collectors, so they just leave a numerical gap in their collection. So naturally, you'd want to sort of chronologically move on to, what, Movie Masterpiece? So now we've got Movie Masterpiece figures, which I still think is pretty simple to keep a completionist of Movie Masterpiece, the MPM. They don't move very fast with these. They don't make a whole lot of them, so it's not like it's really that big of a deal. But then we're already starting to get into some variations with the MPM10R under the 2023 with a Starscream Revenge of the Fallen version, which I guess is just a different paint deco, which is what people are telling me. But for the most part, this is pretty simple to keep up with. It is pretty simple. But now we're getting into also having Bumblebee movie figures. So when are we going to get all of that going on? So keeping up with it, is that lumped in with this? So there's still a bit more complexity to even being a movie collector. So next up, I don't hear anybody say they want to be an XTransbots completist, but I have to admit that XTransbots makes some great complementary pieces to your collection no matter what. But some people might fill out entire shelves of XTransbots because they put out a lot of figures and they do a lot of repaints. But being a completist XTransbots collector would be extremely hard, especially going forward. Maybe looking backward not as hard, but looking forward extremely hard because they're making 3 to 5 repaints of almost every figure that's coming out. So that does get challenging. And they're not cheapest figures in the world. They are reasonably priced. I think for the price-value ratio, they are pretty good. But they're not the cheapest in the world. But there are just so many of these XTrans bots, recolor, and variations that are going to be out there that I can't even truly keep up with them, to tell you the truth. So with that, I just kind of revert. This is Show Z, and they've got a bunch of listings and a bunch of pre-orders up. And that's the other thing about XTrans bots, though. Those pre-orders are still up. They're not sold out. Now, you see a lot of sold out Fans Toys pre-orders. Some Takara sells out relatively quickly, and some other companies do have some sellouts, but for the most part, you can pretty much get everything that you want from XTrans bots with a reasonable amount of time. But being a completionist, probably impossible. So that kind of brings me to this part of the conversation that I want to get down to when it comes to being a completionist. So what I think you see the most would be a character completionist. So when people say I could be a masterpiece completionist, you pick the best version of each character, just go down the checklist of characters until you're done. And that might mean mixing Takara with Fans Toys and XTrans bots and MMC and Toy World, and just mixing all the different companies together to make what you think is the best looking display on a shelf. Maybe you want to mix Gigapower and Fans Toys. I've made videos showing how you could do that, which I sort of did for a while, but I think I'm up on the Gigapowers for the most part. And so with that, yeah, you could be a Gigapower completist and get all 5 of their figures. Even they have 2 different versions with the metallic and the non-metallic version, the chrome and metallics. But yeah, you can mix your Fans Toys and the Gigas, and I think they would be okay, except for the massive size difference. But there's ways to get around that. Now, will we see Fans Toys putting out Sound Blaster? Will we see the KOs of Fans Toys recoloring to put out a Sound Blaster? Are we going to see those kinds of things going forward? I kind of expected, if people have sort of hinted that they would like to see that, and of course I would like to see it too, but at the end of the day, I don't know if I'm in on a whole bunch of different Sound Blasters or Sound Waves from different companies. Maybe all with Fans Toys, or maybe one with Fans Toys and one with Takara, and those kinds of things. But that does make for an interesting display on a shelf if you have maybe Takara Sound Blaster and Fans Toys version of Soundwave or Robot Paradise. So there's a bunch of different things to look at, but I think a lot of people would want a Fans Toys Robot Paradise Sound Blaster. Anyhow, you look at it, we've got a bright future ahead when it comes to collecting Masterpiece Transformers. We have so many new releases to look forward to, probably too many to tell you the truth. We probably have too much on our own plate as collectors to look forward to in pre-orders to be asking for a whole lot more to come. But, you know, we do what we do. We keep asking for more. We keep expecting more, even though there's still so much on the way. But what do you think about this topic? Because I think it was pretty interesting to be brought up as, can you be a Masterpiece completist? And the answer is yes and no. Like and subscribe. Titanium Hanger out.